And welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Very happy to have V Spehar back on in between numerous Substack Live interviews and TikTok videos. V is a journalist, creator, and host of the widely popular Under the Desk News, more than 3.3 million on TikTok. Now, Under the Desk is on Substack, a lot of
Yeah.
followers there, Instagram, you name it. V, thanks for making time. I know you're busy because I'm on your email list for Substack and other stuff, and you're pumping a lot of content. I think it's
I
hours a day of
am.
content, aren't you?
It is hours a day of content. I think it's just what we need right now. Sometimes, I try to be more sparse with what I'm doing, especially in like really heavy times with the news. But right now, I think people are just looking for an escape, for some company, for someone to commiserate with. And so we've been spending more time on the Substack Live, which I've really been enjoying.
Let me ask you something, and I'm curious among because you have a younger or I mean I have different ages people. I don't have demographics, but I can tell from the voices of people that and you are appealing to especially Instagram younger people.
Yeah.
What is what are the topics that they gravitate to that involve politics? Are there any or they intersect politics? Like even if they're not politics head on, what interests them right now?
So I think one of the habits of young people and the internet and the way they consume news is that it's not that they sit down for like appointment television the way that like millennials and older were trained to do. They have this thing that they call body doubling, which is where they're at work and they're just working, but in the background maybe they have on a live Twitch streamer or a live TikTok streamer. They're subscribed to a Substack Live and they're tuned in and listening to that. It's a little bit so I think that's a uniquely different way of consuming information, almost second screen passively. And that's why we're seeing so much success with the Substack Lives because they can do them while they're at their job or they can do them while they're doing anything else.
Hmm.
The things that they are most interested in are RFK Jr., certainly. People are deeply concerned about this alleged autistic registry that he wants to put together. Also about, is the milk safe? All kinds of things. They're very concerned about him. And of course, abortion remains a
Mhm.
leading concern for many people and wanting to know what's going on with that. And then honestly, it's been state and local politics. Like, even if you're not living in Mississippi, a lot of folks from across the nation that are young are interested in what's happening at the local level in Mississippi and how that could impact them, because I think they recognize early that a lot of the most cruel laws that the Trump administration has passed have sort of practiced in the deep South. And so when Mississippi says
Interesting.
we're going to end income tax, well, we know that means that they're going to be seeking more federal dollars. When they say we're going to ban abortion, we know that that case will eventually, as it did with Roe v. Wade, make its way up to the Supreme Court, and we can sort of get a heads up on what's to come
Hmm.
nationally. So that's been really
That's
popular.
That's very interesting because it is. I used to call it cookie cutter conservatism, where they would
Mm-hmm.
do one state and copy, but now it's almost cookie cutter cruelty.
It
That if it's
is.
cruel and it works in one place, let's do it in another. And
Mm-hmm.
and also they learn from outside of our borders. Hungary being the prime example, where
Yeah.
they've been able to use what was a democratic nation and chip away where it's the charade of national elections. The local elections seem legitimate from what I've read, but the national ones are not. You can't beat Orban and his party because they've rigged everything. And Trump's trying to do that
Mm-hmm.
right now. I mean, by the way, I'm not sure if you saw this. He signed in, we don't have the memo, but we just know the headline one to investigate Act Blue. And Act Blue
Yeah.
is because it's a way of fundraising for Democrats. So they're going
Mm-hmm.
after the apparatus of the Democratic Party, the same way Viktor Orban went after in Hungary his opposition and their apparatus, and saying it's about foreign money. Well, if you're worried about foreign money, you should do an investigation to all platforms, any foreign money coming in, because it's illegal, right? But when you're signing it just about Act Blue, it's not about foreign money. It's about us. It's about taking the
Right.
lifeblood from the Democrats away. So these are uniquely challenging and alarming times.
And he does it so openly now, right? I mean, I think Trump 1.0, if you want to call it that, was sort of practice run for the scorched earth we're seeing today. And it's not just the executive order today, I'm going to investigate Act Blue. It's the one where he enacted yesterday, which is the Committee for Anti-Christian bias. Why isn't it anti-religious bias, right? We
Mm-hmm.
know what he's saying. And there are creators like myself who are worried that when he gets done with the law offices, and once he goes through all the major journalists at CBS News and MSNBC and everywhere else, then he'll come down to doing, defamation lawsuits against creators who have said bad things
Sure.
about the Trump administration. Because we know that the point here is to either scare you into submission or completely completely financially destroy people so that they can't have a voice and act. So I think there's a lot of concern right now. Audiences certainly, I think earlier in this term, people responded to comparisons to it's like 1939 Germany, or this is like Nazi stuff. And now they're realizing it's not that. It is Trumpism. It will be its own brand of, fascist-ish
Mhm.
stuff. And again, looking at what Viktor Orban did in Hungary, and even sort of, Erdogan in Turkey, and how that's playing here, and if it can even happen. I mean, those are smaller countries. Can he actually do this to an entire nation as big as the United States? Maybe if he keeps up the tariffs and we're all poor.
Well, look, Vladimir Putin in their prisons right now is only estimated 1,500 political prisoners. But that's enough to scare others into silence.
That's
So
right.
you don't have to put everybody in jail. You don't have to have the military in every blue city. You just do a few
Well,
spectacles.
and they're doing that with the spectacles at CCOT in El Salvador, right?
Mhm.
And my thing that I continue to point out to people is 200 Venezuelan people have been sent, allegedly, that's what they say, right, to El Salvador, allegedly to this prison. But when Kristi Noem is standing in front of all those prisoners, those aren't ours. They are picking out and they are casting the most heavily tattooed, most scary possible people to stand behind her and make it seem like they've done something. But a lot of the people that got deported were already in prison, right? Or
Mhm.
they were already captured, if you want to call it that. And the point is, well, he's going to grow. He's going to build 5 more of these type prisons, and U.S. citizens could potentially go here. The threat and the fear of this is into your everyday, to the point that even I went to a journalism conference in Italy last week, and I was like
Wow.
worried about coming back, which is dumb. I'm an
Mhm.
American citizen. Both my parents were born here. I should have absolutely no worries at all. And for the first time coming back in, I was like, I wonder if I'll be scared. Not that I would be deported or I've done anything wrong, but I wonder if I'll get questioned. I wonder if I'm on a list somewhere. I wonder whatever. I mean, we know David Pakman, who's a friend of my show and yours also, has a naturalized citizen, and his immigration lawyers have advised him not to leave the country because it's unpredictable what could happen when a
Wow. Is he
naturalized citizen
Canadian?
comes
What is
back.
he?
I'm not sure where he's from originally, but he's a naturalized American citizen, and so are his parents. He got
Uh,
naturalized when he was under 18, and he's like, this is
oh,
nuts. This is
yeah.
crazy.
Well, I'm sorry. I like American Americans. I'm sorry
Yeah.
there, V. I can't
Yeah.
go with you on this one. I did a whole documentary called "The
I'm
Muslims Are
like, my
Coming."
dad was a firefighter. Does that count for
Like,
anything?
I
Like,
don't
can I?
know. My dad served in the military.
Yeah, right.
It's Popper, please.
Yeah.
Like White Lotus come to life. No, but the I went to the South. We did a tour called "The Muslims Are Coming." We made a documentary like 10, 12 years ago. And I remember vividly talking to people, and they were like, "What are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm Arab American, Italian American." They're like, "You should just be American American." And they would say that. And there was
Yeah.
they were just being sincere because they were like eighth generation. Like,
Right.
I'm like, "What are you?" They go, "I don't know. I guess like eight, whatever. I came from Ireland or
American.
Scotland, but they came
Yeah.
from America to America. Really, the Americans came to America and became American. The American square, damn it. Jesus was
See,
born in Iowa. What's wrong with you, boy?
I
That
think
kind of
that's
stuff.
it's such an American thing though to want to say like where the original, like where the motherland is, even though
Yeah,
this is the motherland. Like I'm always like, yeah, I'm Albanian. And my mom's like, you're actually like 70% Irish and you're entirely
oh,
American. But
oh,
culturally, that's sort of what you grew up with. And when I grew up, it was still pretty segregated where we were from. There was like Albanians live here, Italians live there, Irish live there.
wow.
Yeah.
That's and I didn't know that you were Albanian. The
Yeah.
John Belushi, famous Albanian.
I
John
know.
Belushi, famous
We got good
comedian.
ones. Him and
And
Mother Teresa, I guess.
and for what it's worth, some of the best Italian restaurants where we live are run by Albanians, which we love.
Yes,
We
we
thought they were
make
Italian.
baller
They speak Italian.
pizza. No, no,
Yeah,
no. We
yeah.
make really good pizza. It's because of the fascism. See, my family already fled from fascism one time. I can't be doing it again. And that's why when folks are like, V, do you think you'll leave the country? I'm like, this is my country. This is where I'm from. And I think it's worth fighting for. So, no.
I agree, but I'm talking about the V Sphere journalists. By the way, how was you were at a conference in Italy. I assume
I
there were
was.
journalists from other nations.
Yes, it was really eye-opening for me because, of course, like very white me going to this thing in Italy and being all worried that, like, if I come back, I'm going to have problems at immigration. And I get over there and I'm going to a lot of the sessions, and it was the International Journalism Festival in Perugia, Italy. And
Wow.
uh, just absolutely humbling because then you're listening to folks and talking to them at the dinners where they have been exiled from their
Hmm.
countries for their reporting and their bravery. And some of them have been exiled to the United States, and they are afraid of being deported, even though they had protections to come here as a journalist. And so that was really jarring. Also, hearing about the Trump administration's attacks on nonprofit statuses for newsrooms. They told us, for profit's not possible. So be a nonprofit newsroom. So everybody became a nonprofit newsroom. And now these folks are having to have conversations with their donors where they're like, listen, you have to fund us even if you don't get a tax break. You still have to fund us. Like, we're going to have to
Yeah.
switch back to an LLC or something, but like, we still need you to commit to us. And luckily, a lot of them are saying that their donors are committed to them. But it's just the chaos is the point, the cruelty is the point, and not ever knowing which way is up. It makes it difficult for you to predict how to, there's the saying, when you're surviving, that's what you're doing. And I feel like that's
Hmm.
what we're doing in news media right now and in activism. We're just trying to survive the day. So we can't really plan ahead to go beyond resistance and into persistence or into moving forward. We're just trying to like hold the line. And that's really debilitating.
And and what I was curious too, that if you talk to journalists from other nations there, and what did they share about their perception of the United States and how it changed or not? Because in fact, today I spoke to my friend Ali Hassan. He's a comedian, but
Yeah.
he's got a CBC radio show in Canada as well.
Mm.
But I know him for years. I go, well, how do you view America? Like, what's going on? And it's remarkable to hear him talk about his fear. He's going with his son to Cincinnati for a baseball or a soccer tournament, but his
Mm.
name's Ali Hassan. He's brown. And
Mm.
he's been here countless times, and he doesn't know if what's gonna happen, if they get in or not. But also about how their view of America is, they can't believe collectively as a nation. And the result has been a big impact on their elections, which are next on Monday. It happens
Hmm.
where if Mark Carney wins election, it's because of Trump.
Right.
They were dead. That Liberal Party was dead, and Trump
Right.
comes in, and they're resurrected from the dead. Resurrected from the dead. So, did you hear anything from foreign journalists about their perception of how America's changed?
Yes, I got to spend time with some of the leaders from UNESCO's office in Paris, and they were basically like, you have to fight. You
Wow.
have to fight. We have to get through this together. Is there any chance of impeachment? Is there this, that, the other? I'm like, no, there's not right now.
No.
But they're like, you have to fight. They're talking about the things they're doing to survive, the way that the truth has to persist. And it was I expected them to be like, stupid Americans, I'm so sick of you guys. You guys are always ruining everything.
Right.
But they weren't. They were really, I would say everyone was in a collaborative nature. They met the moment with the somberness that it requires. And we're very much like, you have to fight. The USAID defunding deeply affected newsrooms across the world. I didn't realize that was part of the cuts also.
I didn't know
But
that.
yeah, so there's just so many things because it might be something like a USAID grant to study women in Africa, right? But then there's a reporting that gets done on that, and that involves journalists. And so they were like, a lot of our stuff is like really held up here. But to see people who have been exiled for their reporting, to see people from other countries who are like, I believe in you, you can fight. This isn't America. This isn't, we still want there to be change or believe that there can be change, I think was really gave me like a new sense of responsibility coming back.
That's good to hear, and I'm also happy that they're noticing and people are
Oh,
getting
they
it,
know.
and
They were
also,
asking me, do we see what they write? And I was like,
oh,
no, not really that much. American politics, at least on social media where I live, is like pretty for and by Americans. And they're like, you should follow me because I talk about American politics and how it's affecting Germany. And I think people should see that we did protests for you. We are
hmm,
protesting Tesla. We are also, like globally on the side of, the more left leaning sides of things and against Elon Musk really was the thing I took away the most is like a lot of people don't like Trump, but seemingly everybody doesn't like Elon Musk.
that's fun. On It's interesting you mentioned that. On Tuesday we have a professor from Germany on. He wrote a book called
Mm,
How Tyrants Fall. How
mm,
Tyrants Fall and Nations Survive. And it's a very good book. What's really eye opening about the book, and I'll talk about it more on Tuesday, but we also always hear about like Hitler, Mussolini, all that. He has more contemporary tyrants, a lot
yeah,
in Eastern Europe, a
yeah,
lot in Latin America, and stuff like that, that are much more current and contemporary. And you're like, one of them changed Kazakhstan. The leader
yep,
there was like Trump, so egotistical, but he changed the names of the months to be after him. Like this is, I'm
yes.
like, wow, if Trump reads this, we're not going to have like July anymore. It's going to be like Trumply or something like that. We're going to be dealing with
I
Don
I think
Lember.
I'm excited and I want to read that book because I think that we do need to talk about more recent tyrants. I think the sort of comfort there is in saying, oh, that's Nazi or that's Mussolini or that's whoever, is the fact that we know how that turned out. And we know
Right.
that the bad guy lost. And so when we say Trump is Nazi or Trump is like Mussolini, somewhere in our subconscious, it's because we believe that he will fall as they did, right? And there'll be some period of like regrowth and like new community. And so I think it's important for us to know more about like Viktor Orban and different recent tyrants,
Yep.
because they don't always lose, and it's not a guarantee that he will lose. We have to kind of like get
Oh,
our arms around what's happening.
if you read the book, they end up losing
Well,
generally their lives or their freedom. But it's a
yeah,
quite how much damage do they do before that happens?
right.
I'm
Yeah.
reading the chapter now on tyranticide. Is that the right way? Tyrannicide?
Tyrannicide.
Tyrannicide. Yeah, when they killed the
Yeah,
tyrant. But it's
of
all about
course.
bodyguards and how like through time, like in the recent
Yeah.
era, and then how they get their bodyguards and
Yep.
they try to get them loyal, but it just takes one.
Yeah.
It just takes one
We saw that in
loyal.
Haiti. Yeah.
Right,
With
and
the,
that, yeah,
yeah.
so
Yep.
that in Haiti, that was exactly in the book. I was just reading
Yep.
that yesterday, where the leader said to his wife, "Stay here, or you'll be fine." And then they
Mhm.
come in. This Colombian mercenary death squad comes in,
Yeah.
and it worked with the local officials in a way, and some of them, and we're able to do a ruse on the others. But it's interesting you mentioned that. Exactly what I was just
Mhm.
reading about. When you read this stuff, you're like, America, our media really sucks about that kind of stuff. We don't learn a lot about foreign things for like a day. I mean,
No,
that made press, but then we don't. But I want to get to something you wrote because you're a villain now. V
I'm
for
in my
villain.
villain era,
V for
apparently.
villain,
Yeah.
apparently. It's
People
for
think I'm
vendetta.
picking on an old man and like like he's not one of the most powerful old men out there.
He was, but
He
you wrote about
was.
James Carville,
Yeah.
and you said James Carville got a lot to say about winnings, everything stupid, despite not having won anything in decades. And he was very upset with David Hogg, who's the new DNC vice chair, who
Yep.
is causing a lot of waves. Like I don't know how
Hmm.
this is going to play out, but David Hogg made a good point that 25 to 30-year-olds in Congress, if it was actual representation, there would be about 40 of them in
Hmm.
it. Instead, there's one who are
Right.
between that age. I think it's
Hmm.
Maxwell Frost is the one,
Yeah.
and
Hmm.
he's trying to do more representation, and that pissed off. And it wasn't even like liberal stuff. It was David Hogg wants to get rid of the ones who are just on the back bench and doing nothing and
Yep.
collect a paycheck. So tell us a little bit about your article, please.
So one thing that had frustrated me is I don't know, like everybody, some people like him, some people don't like him. I just happen
Right.
to be in the camp of I'm sick of seeing him all the time because it feels like I'm sick of seeing the same people all the time, period, the end. I've the same
Right.
people have been in power since the year I was born as are now, right? Joe Biden became a senator like when I was born and he was president, and it's like a long time later. So with him, he my James Carville hate began when he said that the Democratic Party was full of preachy females and it was ruining our ability to win
Oh, I
elections,
didn't
right?
know.
That
How did I miss
he
that?
said too many preachy females in Democratic politics are ruining the party. These aren't people you want to get a beer with, have a hamburger, and it's like too woke, basically.
Right.
And I was like, okay, that's so me and Sammy, my co-host on American Fever Dream, made hats that said preachy female in Democratic politics. So that became like merch, right, for the girls. And since then, he called David Hogg a contemptible twit. He's very like down on anybody who's trying to like do something different. But when he was young, he wouldn't have wanted somebody to speak about him and his dreams and his ambition and passion that way. And so I get
Right.
very annoyed with that. So I started to think like, is there a deeper reason to my sort of annoyance with James Carville, or am I just like sick of older people kind of like talking down to this generation who is not asking for more than just what they had in their day, right?
Mhm.
And I think David Hogg communicated the idea of primarying safe incumbents sort of poorly by saying, I'm going to spend $20 million going after incumbents, which was like, who the fuck are you? Honestly, like, I think a lot of people sort of felt that way straight off the thing.
I'm gonna spend $100 million. How do you like
Yeah.
that, David Hogg?
I
I'm
was
like, I
like,
don't know where to
what?
get that.
Okay. Yeah. So I get that people were like, whoa, that was hot take, but he's also 25 years old. That, he's a hot young guy, like getting fired up. And I think what he should have said is, here's what I wanted, even from Joe Biden. I was like, this is a safe seat. Let's take Nancy Pelosi's seat, for example. She's done a great job. She has held that seat for a long time. Very powerful woman, gotten a lot done. What more can you specifically do as the person who holds the seat that you couldn't do or better serve as a mentor? Wouldn't it be great if people weren't dying in office, but rather you could say, look, I held this seat for a long time. I'm really proud to have brought it where it is. And boy, do I have somebody new for you who's going to make it even more vibrant, make it even more different. But I'm going to be here and I'm going to campaign with them. And I'm going to be around for their first year and I'm going to show them the ropes. And we're going to have this sort of like lifting of all tides, as opposed to people holding onto their seats until they die because they're too afraid to face like retirement or
Right.
whatever comes
Right.
next. They like
I
the way
understand.
they like the life, you know? So I think David could have communicated a little bit better to say, if we have safe seats for Democrats, the time is now to pass the baton. Okay. We've waited patiently. We've tried different things. And I think folks like Dick Durbin stepped up and he was like, you know what? Maybe it was David Hogg. Maybe it wasn't. It probably wasn't. But he was like, I'm 80. It's a 6-year term. I've done a ton. I want to be around to help the next person. And I've got a couple ideas of who that person could be. And there's a lot of great talent here in Illinois. We saw Janet Schakowsky step
Yep.
down from her seat as well. We've got somebody who's 26 years old, a TikToker, Kat Abu, in
Kat.
there. And
I know
I love
Kat. She's
Kat.
on our show. Yeah.
She's fantastic. And so it's like, give her a shot. You know what I mean? Give her a shot in a safe district. Let's start by doing that. And then also trying to win Republican districts back. And James Carville he doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to do that.
No,
He
he
thinks it's a
doesn't.
terrible idea. And so as I
Yeah.
was digging into him, the thing where I was like, okay, I'm going to write this article because I don't usually, I'm the nice side of the news, or at least I was
Right.
until recently, was his work with Palantir. I wasn't necessarily totally aware of his work with Palantir, and there's nothing wrong with being a consultant for many different places. And, Palantir back in 2011 was like, Peter Thiel, is he a ghoul? Maybe, I don't know. But back then it was a little bit like, not quite where we are now. And the fact that he had sort of helped link surveillance to the New Orleans Police Department. And I was like, is this guy like who is this guy? What are his values? Who does he fit in with? Who is he stabbing in the back? What
Yeah.
is he advancing? And so I wrote the piece calling him the grandpa from Coward the Dog.
Well, it's interesting, and I wonder if younger people are that familiar with him. I mean, they might hear this quote and be like
Yeah.
shocked by it. By the way, I was on with Ayaan Amen show on
Yes, you were. Yeah.
MSNBC a few weeks ago. It was
Eamon's doing
nice.
great. He's got a great show.
He does. It's canceled in a week, though. I mean, I'm
No
not kidding.
way.
It's his last weekend. He's not
Why?
gone. The
No,
show
he's
is
getting the
gone.
other show, the
Well,
weekend show or something.
look, if you have the Dean Obeidallah show and you replace it with a show that doesn't have my name and 3 other people with me,
I'm
I'm
not,
still
yeah.
on, but it's not the same.
Man, that's too bad. I loved
Right.
the new format of the Eamon show. I thought it was great.
I
Yeah.
think so too, and I think that I don't want to get into it. I'm going to see him
All
this
right,
weekend.
we'll get
I'm,
into it
I'm
another
part of
day.
I'm part of his White House Correspondents' Dinner show on Saturday, and it's the last. And I did it last year, and I think the year before as well with him. But the only downside, and I talked to him honestly, is that he will not have the complete story selection that he has now. I'm
That's too
sure
bad.
it's a 3-hour show instead of 2, so there'll be
Mm,
give and take. And so I'm sure if someone's very passionate about something, you can squeeze it in 3 hours.
sure.
But every show he has stuff about Palestinians, like Kat's Palestinian American. Uh,
Hmm.
and I know her from those circles and from being on this show. All right,
Hmm.
last topic and last 2 minutes here. Oh, you mentioned RFK Jr. and I did want to touch on because we had someone, Zoe Gross from an advocate for autism. She's self-advocacy.
Hmm.
It's an organization, and they're great. And she had a lot of deep concerns. And not to get into that topic, the substantive of it too much, but what are you hearing also from people who are younger about this? And about he goes by September, we're going to know the cure for autism. It's like you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Why do you
Yeah.
say this garbage? You know you can't know this by Tuesday. No one, we don't know it. We're been stunning all the time.
Let's remember this is the same family that gave a lobotomy to Rosemary Kennedy because she didn't act the way that old Joe thought she should. So I don't really want to go to the Kennedys when it comes to health advice. Not a great track record there. I think the problem with RFK Jr. Is on the campaign trail with the Make America Healthy Again thing. He really preyed upon moms of autistic children who were struggling with finding resources and acceptance and management for their child in this world that is not autistic friendly. And he sort of promised them that he was going to like take them on the ride and prioritize them. And then once he got elected, right, and got put in as health secretary and backed Trump and everything, he's now turned his back on them to essentially say there's call it a disease registry. There isn't a parent out there right now with an autistic child who considers their child diseased. That's not true.
No.
Say they'll never play baseball or write a poem, or that's not true. And so I think a lot of people are feeling very betrayed if they were on the Maha sort of thing. And as much as we'd love to be like, hey, it was red 40, it was red 40. That's not true. Okay. Autism has been something that is, from what we know, genetically passed on. And it's been something that people have lived and thrived and been really cool with for a very long time. Certainly there are different levels of it, but your grandpa who's obsessed with trains probably had autism, right? He just wasn't diagnosed. So I think the big problem we have is Kennedy's with no health experience leading the health department, cutting out thousands, tens of thousands of jobs when there's not enough help out there as it is, and then sort of making autistic people the like crux of his obsession when it comes to how he's going to control medicine, and mislabeling them as diseased and mislabeling them as people who shouldn't participate in society at a time when we have only recently started to get early diagnosis, not just for boys, because remember, it used to be just boys got diagnosed autistic, but also for young girls, for adults, and people who have struggled with feeling like, why doesn't the world click for me the same way it clicks for everyone else? And then they get diagnosed autistic and they find resources. And I think what we're trying to deal with now is like, just because you have a different operating system doesn't mean that you'll never write a poem or enjoy your life. We have resources. And what Kennedy is doing after promising these people he would take care of them is hurting them. And so that is why I think people are very obsessed with Kennedy, because they feel like he truly betrayed them. And I agree.
He did. So, V, last thing, if people want to follow your work or sign up for your Substack, where can they go?
Under the Desk News everywhere. Please sign up for the Substack. It's definitely the place we have the most fun. I'm live all the time. So if you're bored at work, noon, 2 p.m., I might be on a live. Come hang with us for a little bit. We do movie club. It's not all serious. And I'm in my villain era now. So if you want to read some political slop, I've got it for you. Under the Desk News everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, Substack.
Thanks, V. Thanks so much for being on. I look forward to chatting
with you. Thanks for having me.